Hello and welcome to my first Napoleonic Black Powder battle report. Obviously I've done a fair few of Anglo-Zulu before, but this is the first one I've done with my French and British Napoleonic armies. I've still got a lot of painting to do, but I'm at the stage now where I've got enough for 2 large brigades and can have a pretty good battle with them, hopefully. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the forces on each side and the battlefield. I've got my good friend George coming today for a battle. He is into Warhammer and stuff, but he hasn't done much historicals, so this will be his first game of Black Powder. We don't know who's going to be on which side yet. We'll decide that when he gets here. So over this side, on the French left flank, we have the 1st Light Line Infantry, the 2nd Regiment of Old Guard, and a small unit of Voltigeur skirmishers. They are lined up in front of the key objective, which is this storehouse. Next, on the French side, we have 2 units of line infantry. We've got the 101st Regiment and the 28th Regiment, and those 5 units will make up the 1st Brigade for the French, which is commanded by this colonel here. So next along we have the 2nd Brigade, which is the 1st Regiment of Old Guard, a full battery of 6-pounder cannons, an additional unit of line infantry, that's the 51st Regiment, and a unit of line lancers. I think that's the 5th Lancers. So, just to summarise the British forces now, we have a half battery, 9-pounder, I believe. We have the 42nd Highland Regiment, which is the Black Watch Regiment. This is their brigade commander in the middle. And then they also have the 92nd Highland Regiment, which is the Gordon Highlanders, and a unit of skirmishers, 95th Rifles, Little Green Bastards. That's the 1st Brigade. And they also have a unit of 95th Rifles that are actually up into the objective, and they're going to start there. The 2nd Brigade over on the British left is a full battery of 9-pounders. We've got Wellington as their brigade commander. We have the 1st Royal Scots, and we have the Cameron Highlanders behind them. And over on the far left, we have a unit of Lifeguards, heavy cavalry. Right, I'm going to talk you through the battlefield and the objectives and points for victory and things like that. So the British are starting on a slight elevation on top of this ridge, and they have sent out a detachment of 95th Rifles who've managed to grab hold of this small compound in front of a storehouse. And basically, this is going to be the key objective. Whoever occupies the storehouse at the end of the battle is going to get 4 points for that. The British force is slightly weaker than the French. That's why the 95th are going to get to start up here. So they'll probably be able to snatch that building really early on, and then they'll have to hang on until their pals behind them catch them up, give them some support. So that's going to be the main objective, which is worth 4 victory points for whoever owns the building at the end. And then the rest of the battle is very open. A little bit of light cover, some fences and hedgerows and stuff. This is just going to be a bit of a free-for-all over this side. Obviously, they can contest the building as much as they want from all directions, but there will be opportunities to be a bit looser over this side. Okay, so summary of British turn 1. Not much has moved. Unfortunately, George did not have the best rolls, so everything is stuck where it is. But the only kind of positive is that the 95th Rifles at this compound did manage to move into the building and grab it. So they have possession of that. And they're probably going to be quite tricky to get out of there. So it's going to be a good challenge for the French, of which there is lots coming for them. Okay, so that's the end of British turn 1. Obviously, not a lot of movement from George there, but he did shoot with his half battery of cannons over here and his full battery of cannons here. No casualties on the French, but we do have disorder on the 28th. Right, so that is the end of the French movement. And they've got every single unit moved except for the disordered unit. So over in the compound here, the light infantry and the 2nd Old Guard Regiment formed attack columns and moved up into the compound, supported by the voltigeurs at the wall here. So they're all going to have plenty to shoot at up on that ridge. The 95th are hunkered down in the building still. The French haven't attacked the building. In the centre, we have the 105th Line Regiment moved up and formed a line, as did the 1st Old Guard Regiment. Cannons moved up a very small amount. Over on the right-hand side, though, had a lot of movement with the Line Lancers. They charged the Royal Scots, who formed square, and then the unit have bounced back. And they have a little bit of support from the 28th. Is it the 28th? No, the 51st Line Regiment. They moved up and formed a line here. So the French have got a really quite consistent move across the board and a good line of defence here. So we'll move into some shooting, and there's no hand-to-hand. Okay, so that's the end of the French turn 1. There's quite a bit of shooting with limited amount of effectiveness. So the 95th Rifles in the centre have been disordered, and 1 casualty was inflicted over on the lifeguards. But other than that, not much happened. But at least we've got some units off the marks. So there's going to be some turns full of action coming up, hopefully. So we'll move into British turn 2. Okay, so that is the end of British movement for turn 2. The 42nd Black Watch Regiment have moved up to the compound wall. They haven't moved into combat with anyone, so they can probably have a few pop shots at the Old Guard here. They've come to help the 95th Rifles in the building, obviously. They're still supported from the hill by the half battery. Over in the centre, the Gordon Highlanders have moved down to the fence, see off the French. The 95th Rifles in the centre, though, obviously disordered, so they couldn't move. The full battery in the centre have stayed where they are. It's looking quite loose over this side, so we have the Royal Scots who are stuck in square formation, with the Lancers obviously causing that. And then the Cameron Highlanders have swung round in anticipation of piling some musket fire into these lot. The Lifeguards charged straight forwards into the 51st Line Regiment, who have now formed square. So they've just bounced off. So we've got double cavalry charge over on this side, but the cavalry haven't actually met each other yet. So we will move into some British shooting, of which there is going to be a lot. Right, so that is the end of British Turn 2, and somehow there's still no hand-to-hand. The 2nd Regiment of the Old Guard have taken a hit from the Black Watch regiments. They're on 1 casualty. Over in the centre, the Old Guard, the 2nd Regiment of Old Guard have taken disorder from the cannon fire and the casualty. And then over on this side, the Lancers took a little bit of a pounding. They had fire from the square and from the Cameron Highlanders up there. So they are on 2 casualties and they're disordered. So they are in a bit of a sticky situation, and they're kind of completely removed from the rest of the army. So they could be in trouble. And that's it. So that's a summary of the end of British Turn 2. So that is the end of French Turn 2. Over on the left side, the Voltigeurs have been piling fire into the building where the 95th Rifles are hunkered down. We had a hand-to-hand combat with the Old Guard and the Black Watch Regiment over here. The Old Guard won, but became shaken in the process. So next time there's probably going to be a bit more action over here. That combat continues. Over in the centre, the 105th French Line Regiment were destroyed by the Gordon Highlanders in hand-to-hand combat. So they actually have left the board. They were destroyed. The Old Guard then had to take a break test. Thankfully they passed that. These guys actually had wheeled round previously to offer fire into the building. Again, against the 95th, who, as you can see, are occupying these loopholes here in the wall. Unfortunately, the Old Guard missed every single shot, which is not ideal. Over on the right flank for the French, though, a lot happened. This French unit here, the 28th, I think they are, they actually got 3 full moves up the entire board. They charged the Royal Scots, who were in square over here, and defeated them. So they've actually retired off the board, but they can come back after they've lost their disorder. And then after they won the combat, they made a consolidating retreat just behind the Lancers, mainly just to keep out of harm's way for next turn. And then over here, obviously the unit in square is basically kind of stuck with the heavy cavalry in front of them. So quite a lot happened. We lost 2 units off the board, one of which can come back. So we're now going to move into British Turn 3. So that is the end of British Turn 3, I think. And there's lots of gaps on the battlefield now. So the Line Lancers retired off the board, but they can come back on the next French turn. The 28th Line Regiment were absolutely obliterated by fire from the Cameron Highlanders. And then the Lifeguards, after seeing off the Line Lancers, ploughed into them. And they didn't stand a chance. So they have been destroyed. So there's a massive gap in the middle of the French army now, which is not looking particularly good. Don't think massive amount happened over here. The Highlanders put disorder on the Old Guard in the centre. The 95th Rifles in the building, still holding on. They haven't really been contested much other than a little bit of fire from the Voltigeurs and the Old Guard. So that's the end of British Turn 3. So the French have had a few scary moments there, but we'll see if they can hang on. We'll go into French Turn 3. That is the end of French movement for their 3rd turn, and some call it retreating, some call it consolidation. being a bit more tactical here, just trying to protect the units that I've got left, because they've had a hard couple of goes. So this square has moved back clear of the cavalry, and hopefully next turn they can kind of manoeuvre themselves a bit better and get back to helping out where they're needed. The cannons have moved up in the centre, hopefully so they can pile in some shot into the Cameron Highlanders and the Life Guard. Over here, the brigade commander from the right has joined this first unit of Old Guard. So he's rallied them back down to 2 casualties. Obviously, they've got a stamina of 4, not 3. The Gordons are holding tight in the centre there still. They're not going anywhere. Over on this side, nothing has really moved, to be honest. The second unit of Old Guard is still in combat. They're on 3 casualties, so they're nearly shaken. And the light infantry have stayed where they are in support. Voltigeurs are still just going to hold that little corner of wall and pile in some shot against the 95th, who still hold the building. Hadn't really been challenged much yet. But we'll go into some shooting and some hand-to-hand, and hopefully the French can get things back going in the right direction for them. Okay, that is the end of French turn 3, which means we're officially halfway in the battle. This combat between the Black Watch and the Old Guard continues. Both units are now shaken. The Old Guard just won the last combat. Support to that flank gave them the bonus. The light infantry sharpshooters did manage to disorder this half battery on the hill. And then over in the centre, we had an absolutely astounding roll. This battery of 6-pounders put some really devastating fire onto the Cameron Highlanders, who managed to roll a double 6 to avoid any casualties. But they are disordered, so we did get something out of it. Not much happened in the middle here. The Old Guard didn't inflict any casualties on the Gordons. And the square over on this right flank still just out on its own a little bit. But hopefully the Lancers can come back next turn and help those guys out a little bit. So that's the summary at the halfway point. The 95th Rifles are still in the building and haven't really had much challenging actions against them, so they've just had a few shots really. And the building gives them so much protection that they're really hard to get moving. But I'd say the French look a little bit stronger over here on the left, despite the lack of casualties on the 95th. And then in the centre, the French have lost a few units, but so have the British. But there's going to be some units coming back now. So we'll go into British turn 4. Okay, so that's the end of British turn 4. Over on the left flank here, on my left flank, that combat has gone on into another turn. Still no one is broken. Both units are now shaken. Both passed their break tests. This cannon, he can have his disorder taken off, so he's back to normal now. Over in the centre, the cannons put disorder and a casualty onto the Old Guard. The Gordons didn't do much, but these 95th have been sat in the same position the whole game, and they've finally got a command to move up. So they've been providing fire against the artillery. The Camerons are still sat there, the luckiest people on earth. And then over on the far side, the Royal Scots have disordered the square over on that right flank. And then this is the kind of most movement that the British had that turn, which is the Life Guards over on this corner have ran round on their left flank, and they're gonna basically have the opportunity to run in behind the French lines now, which could be an issue, but we'll see. We'll see how it's gonna go. So we're going into French turn 4. So that is the end of French Turn 4, and catastrophic is probably the word that jumps to mind first. So over on this left flank where we had an old guard regiment and a light infantry regiment, both have broken and left. So the Black Watch regiment basically beat off the old guard. The line infantry had actually charged the 95th Rifles in this building, and they also have been beaten off by the 95th. So both of those units have left. So we've got a massive hole over on this left side, just with a few voltigeurs hiding behind a wall, probably thinking it's nearly home time. So that brigade on the left is basically gone, but we're not going to play the brigade rules. It's more fun to just kind of play it out till the end. In the centre, the old guard remain disordered, and they are one casualty away from being shaken, so not looking good in the centre either. The only thing that's done really well for the French is the cannons. They've put lots of fire into the British and caused lots of disorder. Over on the right flank, again, not looking ideal. This unit in square did a disorderly retreat from this flanking manoeuvre over here by the lifeguards. So these guys are obviously thinking it's probably home time as well soon. And then over on the British side, the line lancers came back from their retreat off the board, but they're shaken, so they can't charge anyone. They're miles away from their brigade commander, so they can't really be rallied. So they're basically not doing much. They're just kind of trotting about, maybe considering a charge in the next turn if they're still there. We shall see. Right, we'll go into British turn 5. If the French hang on to the end of this turn, I'll be very surprised. They're almost at 50% now, and once they've lost more than half their units, I think we'll probably call it. The British are still yet to lose a unit, which is astonishing. Done really well. So we'll go into British turn 5. Okay, so that's the end of British turn 5, and it's still looking pretty dire for the French. So over on the left flank, voltigeurs are now disordered. They've got the Black Watch breathing down their necks, basically. The 95th's still hunkered down in the building. Haven't really had anything to do today, to be honest. Old Guard are now in the middle. They're shaken and disordered. Oh yeah, 95th and the Gordons and the cannons all fired at the Old Guard, and it's just about hung on. Over here, the Camerons have rotated to see off the line lancers, so they're just piling fire into them, and they just about survived. And then down on the right flank, the Royal Scots have moved closer in to shoot at this square, which is in a bad way. They're on their double turn of disorder. And then over here, we've got the lifeguards trying to flank round the back, which, yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're actually going to get a chance to do that because it might all be over by then, but we shall see. The French hang on. If they lose any units, though, it's game over. So, French turn 5. So, French turn 5, some really key movement here. Obviously, the voltigeurs over here couldn't do anything, so they're stuck. But they've got their brigade commander over here still. In the centre, the Old Guard have moved forward, removed their disorder. They're still shaken, but they're hopefully going to be able to shoot something this turn. The cannons have just shimmied around the side, and they're really going to try and get rid of those Gordon Highlanders in the middle. This unit, obviously in square and disorder, is stuck. But over here, the commander has joined the Lancers, and he's rallied them down to 2. So maybe a glimmer of hope from this side just to get some dignity back, but we'll see. So we'll go into some shooting and hand-to-hand, if there is any. No, it's not. Just shooting it is. Okay, so end of French turn 5. The voltigeurs actually shot the Black Watch and put enough casualties on them to make them break test, and they actually left the board. So the left flank is basically empty now. I mean, you've got skirmishes outside the building, skirmishes inside the building, no one really doing much. In the centre, the Old Guard fired at the Gordons, and they are now shaken. They haven't had to take a break test yet because they're not in excess or anything like that. Cannons also shot into the Gordons, again putting more casualties on them, so they are shaken, but they're still there. And then over here, the square fired into the Royal Scots and actually put them in excess of their stamina. So they had to retreat a full move and become disordered. So that actually went pretty well for the French. Like, that's probably their most positive turn for a good hour or two. I don't know how much longer they'll hang on, because basically if anyone falters now, that's it. So we'll see. We're going into the last British turn now. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I think the British will clench victory though. I can't see the French pulling this one out of the bag. So yeah, we're going to final British turn. Right, that is the end of the last British turn, and it is the end of the game because the French have lost over 50% of their units. And as you can see, the battlefield is carnage. Over here, we've got the Royal Scots. They hung on disordered and shaken. The Camerons barely had any damage on them the whole game. Over here, this square clung on but didn't really do much. This was the combat that broke the game. The Life Guards charged the foot artillery to the flank, and they were the last unit to drop, so they're gone. This unit took so many hits and disorder, somehow clung on, but not enough to win the game. Then obviously the 95th in the Storehouse never really came under any stress really. They've been in there the whole time, haven't had to do much. Alright, so the objective counted for 4 points, and then George got another 11, so it's 15 points for the British, and a measly 4 points for the French. So that is, I think it's called the trouncing. So yeah, game over, but it was a lot of fun. So we'll definitely be doing more of these in future.